I'm declaring this for all of you today, your mental health day. Because Simone Biles triggered something that I think is really vital and important for everyone. Simone Biles' life comes down to centimeters. It comes down to a certain spin rate, a certain balance, a certain lift, a certain body structure, a certain form, and it comes down to judging. And it comes down to years upon years of training, years upon years of discipline, years upon years upon years of internal pressure you put on yourself for a moment, for a second. And that second, that moment is the difference of centimeters. Simone Biles and the rest of the U.S. gymnasts and the rest of international gymnasts do things physically that most of us could never dream of doing. And Simone Biles happens to do something physically that even most Olympic gymnasts couldn't dream of doing. And yet her margin for error is centimeters, millimeters. A foot here, a landing spot there, an arm here, or tuck there. I mean, these are, again, millimeters, centimeters, inches we are talking about that define your life. And Simone Biles, on top of that, had this type of pressure. You were the greatest ever to do it. Not only are you an Olympic hopeful, not only are you a gold medal hopeful, not only are you part of the most decorated gymnastics team and one of the most decorated Olympic teams of all time, U.S. gymnastics, but you are also the greatest ever to do it, and you overshadow everybody else on your own team. And at 24 years old, we have declared you the GOAT. 24. Tom Brady's 43. Michael Jordan was in his 30s, 40s, before we actually said, yeah, that's the greatest basketball player ever. Certainly his 30s. Wayne Gretzky, 30s. I mean, it takes time to build up a catalog of accomplishments before you can say that's the greatest we've ever seen anybody do it. And Simone Biles did it by the age of 24. And again, unlike Tom Brady, who plays 16 games a year and then the playoffs, every week has a chance to redeem a bad effort, forgets that it's fourth down, in 6 days he has another game. Has a terrible Super Bowl against the Giants, in 5 months he's back on the football field, competing again. LeBron has 82 games and 7-game series. Simone Biles has one event every 4 years. You only get like 3 of them in your life, Olympics, if you're a gymnast. And your differential is not, I can miss 10 shots and still dominate a game. It's millimeter here, millimeter there. That pressure must be crushing. Internal pressure. And then the external pressure that comes with expectations and scrutiny and criticism. Now, Simone Biles has leaned into the GOAT thing. It's not like she's run from this. So that's her seemingly embracing that pressure as well. I bring all of this up as context. Simone Biles yesterday pulling herself out of the competition because she knew her mentals weren't right, and recognizing if my mentals aren't right, A, I'm a threat to injure myself because of the physical nature of my competition, and B, I'm damaging my team's ability to succeed, and they've put in work to deserve at the very best, is actually a remarkably mature moment. Some people will criticize it. I haven't seen a lot of that, and thankfully so. I think most people are empathetic towards her. Some people will say, well, you're soft, or you pulled yourself out and you couldn't take the pressure, and you should have taken the pressure because you've seen that pressure before. But ultimately, I find this to be a very mature decision. And after it, hearing Simone Biles talk, I didn't hear weepy. I didn't hear emotionally broken. I didn't hear somebody out of control. I heard somebody very much in control of, logically speaking, pragmatically speaking, this is how I felt. This is how I knew it wasn't the right day. This is why I had to do what I had to do. Naomi Osaka had much of the same thought process a number of weeks ago. This is hugely important. I asked myself, well, what makes Simone Biles different than Mary Lou Retton, Nadia Comaneci, Dominique Dawes, Dominic Moceanu, Shannon Miller? Legends, absolute gymnastic legends that had unbelievable pressure on them the same very way. I'm talking about millimeters defining your life. And they didn't pull themselves out of Olympic competition. And they weren't the athlete that Simone Biles is. Michael Phelps, Mark Spitz, the greatest Olympians of all time. They also didn't do this either. So what makes this different? Well, let's talk about, for a moment, Michael Phelps, who has admitted that once competition was over, the drive, the ambition, the pressure, the scrutiny forced him into very deep depressions to where he used substances, alcohol and drugs, to medicate. He is one of the most modern GOATs that we have. Same with Simone Biles. I believe that modern society, modern American society specifically here, has created this untenable reality. And that young Olympians who are still young in their 20s, maybe without the armor that you build up over your years of wisdom and experience, without having just the natural armor that you need to go through life and the ups and downs, are being thrust into unbelievably pressure-packed situations and unable to navigate them the same way previous generations could. And it's not their fault. It is the fault of where we are today as an American society. We are more open-minded about therapy. We're open-minded about meditation. We're open-minded about health and wellness and mental wellness. But how many of us actually do it? How many of us are actually connected to our internal selves in terms of grounding and centeredness and spirituality? How many of us actually every single day practice something that makes us more zen, puts us at peace, makes us more grateful? How many of us? Very, very few. Very, very few. Instead, what do? We're on our phones all day. And we listen to media all day. And we ingest other people's social media all day. And all of that is so detrimental. Think about this combination. A, you're distracted by things happening in front of you on your phone constantly all day, hours a day. I mean, look, I've seen my iPhone usage 6-7 hours a day. I'm on my phone. So 7 hours of my day compared to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. I'm looking at something, doing something I never would have done in a previous generation. And it is buttons and screens and scrolling and information and pictures. And it is Definitely not the way humans used to be wired. Antagonistic media, antagonistic people, where you are fighting or criticizing or listening to people fight and criticize, being indoctrinated into that every single day, which is why I always say, don't watch cable news. Many people are addicted to cable news. It's because it gives you a rush. It's a rush of anger. It's a rush of fear. It's a rush of hating something, somebody else, the differences in people. It is playing on that. It is poison. It is mental and emotional poison to be attracted to cable news. They are not doing this for you. They are doing this for them. And then social media. You are constantly, we all are, comparing our lives to other people's lives on social media, when in reality, it is only highlight reels. It's like Tom Brady's every throw goes into a jugs machine perfectly. And he gets to walk away, hair mussed, tan, sun coming down, and gets to say, let's get after it. Let's go get it. When in reality, there is a Tom Brady that forgets fourth down, that lies on his side after being crushed by Michael Strahan in the Super Bowl, that sits and looks down to the ground after he throws an interception. There's a Tom Brady that has really bad moments, and he'll never post that, nor does anybody post those moments. And yet, you compare yourself to that every single day. And so the girl you dated in high school, or your best friend, or a former coworker, or a family member has his or her best pictures up there, and the lighting's perfect, the filter's perfect, and they're out at a beach. You're like, well, why isn't my skin that perfect? And why isn't my smile that perfect? And why am I not at a beach? They must have something I don't. And this happens every day. And think of this combination for young people. Why teen suicide skyrockets. It's because young people they don't have the armor to be able to say, yeah, this isn't that big a deal. To them, everything's a big deal. You can remember this when you were a 13 or 15 or 17-year-old, and everything is a big deal. Oh my gosh, my friends are at a party that I'm not at. The boy that I like doesn't like me. The girl that I like is not into me. Why does teen suicide skyrocket? Why does teen depression skyrocket? It is because of all of these things. We are on our phones, we're on our social media, and we are hearing voices that are hating on one another constantly. Well, Simone Biles and Michael Phelps and the rest of young athletes are not in any way different human beings. They're all of that. And yet they also have this unbelievable Olympic pressure on them, where the sporting event is once every 4 years, and the differential is seconds, millimeters. We had Gail Devers on the show yesterday. She won 3 gold medals as an Olympic sprinter back in the 90s. I said, how is it possible that I can watch a freestyle swimming event, and in totality, it's 60 seconds of swimming that defines your life. And if you come in second, based on 0.2 of a second, you can actually smile at getting the silver or bronze. And she said, that's 60 seconds. My races were 12 or 13 seconds. Imagine your life coming down to 13 seconds. Everything that you've ever worked for, that you've poured everything you have into 13 seconds. And if you are 0.2 of a second slower than your competition, it's not your ultimate goal. It is a type of pressure we cannot understand in an era that we absolutely don't understand. It is why I am telling you today, work on your mentals today. If you feel depressed because of COVID, isolation, being away from family, fear, anxiety, job, that is totally okay. Everybody has. And if you feel anxiety or depression, you have lack of sleep, you have too much pressure on yourself financially, on your family, again, work, family, job, anything, that is totally normal. It is completely normal to feel those types of things. And if you go on social media and you start feeling insecure, less than, questioning yourself, that is completely normal as well. But what you have to do is you have to counterbalance. Instead of rolling up to a drive-through and eating the feelings today, which so many of us do, instead of just pressing our nose into our phone to distract ourselves once again, work on your mentals. Drop the phone off at home, take a walk, a mile, half mile, quarter mile, leave the phone. Leave the phone behind. Read a book, any type of reading. Get away from electronics. Take 30 minutes and just close your eyes. And if you fall asleep, great. And if not, just think. Clear your head. Do anything. Simone Biles, I hope, becomes this moment where we go, wow, even Simone Biles couldn't take the anxiety in that moment. And she's superhuman. Because then that all gives us license to say the same exact thing. Don't be so hard on yourself. But also work on this. It's a job. If we spend 6 hours on our phone every single day, you've got to counterbalance that with something else. And I say this through my own experiences. Many, many times, imagine the business I'm in. You compare yourself with ratings all day long, with Twitter followers all day long, with retweets and job promotions and opportunities in media all day long. You do this with your peers. Imagine if you were an insurance salesman and you knew how successful every insurance salesman was in America. And you knew your competition. And there was a scoreboard, the type of anxiety you would go through. This is what we deal with in this media world. And what I have to do constantly is work on this to make sure I'm not falling into the same traps. Simone Biles is not weak. She's not anything less than. She merely represents a reality for all of us. Without unbelievable dedication to the mental side of things, you find yourself lost at sea, sometimes in your most important moment. And that's what happened to her yesterday. And she was vulnerable enough, transparent enough, and mature enough to identify it and actually address it. And that's pretty unique. That's pretty special. Use today as a mental health day. Just do something today. Just something that helps you. Even if it's 15 minutes, meditation, reading, a walk. Just do something that you know is about you. And start that train so that you build that into a talent, into a strength, into a skill set. And you'll be far more ready to deal with what happens to us all on a daily basis in 2021.